Okay, so you're now familiar with your capacity to rewire your brain, and you're becoming familiar with the four principles of emotional management. So I want to spend some time now talking about that first principle, as in labeling the emotions. I mentioned the flight, fight, and freeze response, that automatic response that our body has when it's under threat. And there's two parts of the brain that I want you to be familiar with. That doesn't mean you need to learn these words, but just understand once again the principles that underpin them. So there's two parts of the brain. The amygdala sits on top of our brain stem, and that's what kicks off that automatic flight, fight, and freeze response. This amygdala is no bigger than a walnut, no bigger than your thumbnail, sits on top of your spinal stem and is automatically hooked into your senses. So that means it is aware of smells and sight and sound and touch even before the big part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex that sits above your eyes, is aware of it. So it's a safety mechanism. It's been great historically. That's why it's put there. It's saved us as a species. So if you think back, if we're out on the tundra hunting some woolly mammoths and all of a sudden we became the hunted by a saber-toothed tiger, it was that automatic emotional response that kicked in that saw us running to home for safety. So the fellow that kicked in his prefrontal cortex and thought, I wouldn't mind having a bit of that saber-toothed tiger. His coat looks pretty good, and certainly sabers could make some pretty impressive presents or weapons. He's probably the fellow that didn't get on to hand down his genes to you and I and generations before us. So this amygdala has historically and even now is crucial to our safety as a species. But as part of this emotional management, I want you to start being able to identify what your physiological responses are associated with that flight, fight, or freeze response. And all our physiological responses are different. So there's two worksheets below that I want you to print off. One is just a model of the brain that identifies where that amygdala is in the prefrontal cortex, and just saying that we want you to start, or I want you to start thinking about how you're going to rewire your brain between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex, because historically you've been using drugs and alcohol to modulate that emotional response. And then the other worksheet is called a physiological man. So I want you to print that off and start identifying on that man what your body would be doing, like whether it would be your hair that was standing on end, your muscles that are all tensing up, how your heart's pounding, because these are your first warning signs that you need to put some strategies in place to manage your emotions. So print off the worksheet and all the best with it.